For better or for worse, I think if you grew up outside of Bryan, people just came to associate Bryan with being like the city kids. For someone who really knows the dynamics of Northwest Ohio, you can absolutely see how those mentalities sort of go hand in hand. Quite literally, we had like Orchard Hills Country Club. So we did have that, status symbol, exclusive place where you can go and hang out and like life is good. We had like the Walmart Super Center. We had all these other things that contributed to this like higher society mentality, this like we're better than you mentality. When we lost, in theory, we should have been able to win more and be better because we were typically competing against schools that were smaller than us.
That's Jason Hugg, and when he says he knows the dynamics of Northwest Ohio, he's right. And yes, having a Walmart in Northwest Ohio is a big deal. Nobody else around has one. Hugg played football for the Bryan Golden Bears high school football team from 2010 to 2013 and was the definition of a student athlete. Student first, athlete second. The stereotype other schools held against the Golden Bears was that they were privileged and had advantages in sports. On the education side, that advantage wasn't there. Bryan's most famous export is the dum-dum sucker. If you've ever had one, you have a connection to the small Ohio town of about 8,000 people. Dum-dums are made by Spangler Candy Company, located in Bryan, Ohio. Their president is Bill Martin, and in 2011, Martin would be the voice of a campaign to replace 2 elementary schools and a preschool in the Bryan School District.
We had 2 elementary schools. One was built like in 1917, so if we didn't do something soon, it was going to have its 100th birthday. And then the other elementary school we had was built in 1956. So in 2011, what was that? That's 55 years old. Same problems that Lincoln School had. It seemed like the Lincoln School even maybe held up a little bit better. So it seemed obvious, hey, the first thing we got to do, we got to solve this elementary school. Sports especially, you learn from failure because it's going to happen. And we failed, and I think we did a good job of learning what that football team did in 2013 was really connected to our success.
When community and sports came together in 2013, it changed the course of the small town forever.
But the football team, I tell you, those guys gave us like a venue to tell our story. They brought up the belief in the community that we could be better than what we were. That's what those guys taught us. Those boys showed the adults that we can be better than what we are, what we've been.
I'm Caleb Zuver. Welcome to Better Than What We Were, a podcast dedicated to a team and a town that's shaped my own sports life and journey. Growing up, all I ever cared about was sports. I loved playing them, I loved watching them, I loved talking about them. So on a Friday night in the fall, what better place to do all 3 of those things than Golden Bear Stadium? In the grass behind the stadium, you'd usually find my friends and I playing a pickup game of football while the varsity game went on. Occasionally, I'd stop to watch the game, but Bryan was never fun to watch at football. It wasn't until 2012 where I stopped to watch. It was a group I couldn't take my eyes off of. The weeks in between games, talk about the team filled the community, so I got my fix of playing, watching, and talking about this team. Little did I know the effect it would have on my life. Looking back, the dream of just a good football team, much less a changed community, wasn't always within reach.
I like to tell the story when I was the athletic director. I only ever fired one coach.
That's Brian Arnold. From 2001 to 2007, he served as head football coach at Bryan High School while simultaneously holding the athletic director position. The Bryan football program was so dormant for so long that after the 2007 season, Arnold had to make a rare and humble decision. A 21-49 record just wasn't good enough.
The only one I ever fired was myself. I had to get rid of me as the head football coach. My last couple of years, we at least weren't awful. We were 5-5 the last year, and I got a Gatorade bath. That was how low the expectations were. And that's probably about the time I realized, hey, it's probably time for a change. That was one of those things I always kind of worried about. Was like, Bryan's just not a football town. Maybe this just doesn't matter that much to him. It's not a big deal. One of the only selfish things I think I can even remember from the time was I'm getting out and there's these kids in the 5th and 6th grade right now that are really good. I had the opportunity to write the job description and to say, and then interview people and put the committee together. So that was an important part for me too, as I still had a hand in that to make sure that it went the right direction.
Travis Cooper was hired by Arnold to lead the Bryan Golden Bear football program in 2008. By year 2, he had taken the program to somewhere they've never been before, the Ohio State playoffs.
Everything just fell right. It was one of those where everybody lost that had to lose. The people who we beat won, and the points were right, and it got us in. And it was the celebration. We're in. Oh, by the way, you're going to Columbus, St. Francis de Sales. Archie Griffin's boys playing down there. That's the best team money can buy kind of thing in the Columbus area, but we were in. The dominoes all just fell the right way, and that was a great start for us.
Cooper's hard-nosed mentality was a change and caused a new look program that started to experience real success for the first time in over 20 years. And by the late 2000s, the Bryan community was hoping for the same type of change to their school system. In 2009, the Bryan City school system was set up like this: 4 different schools for 12 grades, including a 5th building that was a preschool. Washington Elementary was the kindergarten through 1st grade building. It was built in 1951. Lincoln Elementary held grades 2 and 3. That was built in 1917. The high school held just grades 9 through 12. It was built in 1956. Bryan Middle School was the newest building. It housed grades 4 through 8, and it was built in 1987. All 4 facilities were in 4 different locations across the small town of around 8,400 people. None of them were close to each other, and they were aging. Something had to be done.
My name is Diana Savage, and in 2012, I was serving as the superintendent of Bryan City Schools.
Similar to the process of hiring a new coach as Bryan had previously done with their football program, a committee was put together to conduct an inspection of the buildings to try and figure out what the right plan would be.
And at the end of that study, what that committee recommended to the school board was that we definitely needed to build new, but the highest priority was to build a new elementary because those were our oldest buildings and our highest need.
Why did we decide to go the elementary school route? Most outside observers probably would have done the same thing. Even though Lincoln had a lot of really good character, I went over and I toured it and walked through it. I'm like, gosh, it doesn't have all the safety features, that new schools have. It's got old boiler equipment that's like 60 years old, and so it's not efficient. I mean, if you really look under the hood, you realize, man, we got to do something about this. And then the other elementary school we had was built in 1956. So in 2011, what was that? That's 55 years old. Same problems that Lincoln School had. It seemed like the Lincoln School even maybe held up a little bit better. So currently I'm president of Spangler Candy Company. Been employed here 25 years now.
That's Bill Martin again, president of Spangler. And as a committee was being formed for a Levy campaign, they needed a leader. Glenn Newcomer was serving on the Bryan School Board in early 2011, and because of Bill's track record of serving the Bryan community, he approached him to be the head of the campaign.
It's in the Spangler family's DNA, to be a positive force. I was involved very much with the YMCA. I got involved there. I got involved with some other things with our company, Spangler. And Glenn just came out and he said, hey, we need to do something about our facilities. To do that, he explained to me what had to happen. There's operating money, which is operating levies, but there's also bond issues that you can pass to build facilities. It felt like the right thing to do. We formed our committee. We did all the things that you do for a campaign that we thought you needed to do. We held open community meetings. We were not connected in any way to any kind of sports activity. It was all just about making the case to build a new elementary school.
The goal was to convince the majority of voters in the Bryan School District to vote yes on a bond issue, or as it's described in this podcast, a levy, to build a new elementary school. Building new is something the Bryan football team would have to do in 2011 as well. Kevin Klein taught at Bryan High School in 2011, despite living in Defiance, a town 19 miles south of Bryan. He also was the head football coach at Edgerton High School, a town 13 miles west of Bryan. On a typical autumn day, Klein drove a total of 59 road miles. It's what caused him to step down at Edgerton. Through football and teaching, though, he developed a relationship with Cooper.
So we used to eat lunch every day together. So we would go down and I would go down to his room and we would sit and we would talk and we would just talk football and we talk life. And, I think that's where our friendship kind of started. I knew I still wanted to coach, but I'm just like, I can't keep driving that triangle. But I'd resigned and then the Wasion job came open. So I was like, Wasion's that's a good job. Like, it's a nice community. So I applied for it. Coop and I, during lunch, were talking about it. And I'm like, yeah, well, I put in for that Wasion job, just so you know. And he goes, I was thinking about that. He goes, I was thinking about maybe putting in for that because I think that's a pretty good job too. And then like the next day he came in and he's like, you're gonna be mad if I put in for it too. And I was like, no, go right ahead. That's fine. And then he ended up getting that job. And then obviously Bryan's job came open. Coach Arnold came down and he talked to me, which made me feel very wanted.
I went to Klein and asked him, you got to strike when the iron's hot. When he was, yes, I'm interested, I knew which way I wanted to go right from the get-go.
That's Bryan Arnold again, and soon after Cooper left for Wasion, he told the Bryan Times, the community's local newspaper, quote, "We're disappointed to lose a good coach, and I'm going to root for him every week except one every year. I hope we pound them every time we play them," end quote. The football team's opportunities would come, but there was questions about Bryan football losing its success and toughness. Remember Jason Hugg talking about Orchard Hills Country Club in the beginning? That status symbol that Bryan had of being privileged? With Klein growing up in Northwest Ohio his whole life and being present in multiple communities, he heard that chatter.
Where I was coming from, like none of my friends were going to belong to a country club. Like we just didn't have, that's not something we had to our availability or could do. And retrospectively looking at it, there's probably a little bit of jealousy there and being like, gosh, these guys have all that stuff and they have all these nice things and they got the country club. So it's an easy tag to throw on a group of kids that lives close to you that you wanted some inspiration to play.
Yet, when it came to education, Bryan didn't have the nice things. As Diana Savage and Bill Martin explained, other school districts surrounding Bryan had recently upgraded their facilities during this time. All with much lower populations than Bryan, Stryker, Hilltop, Montpelier, and Eden local schools passed levies to build new schools.
And to see all other school districts in Williams County to have these beautiful new facilities and high technology facilities. We like to think that Bryan is like the center of the universe in Williams County. We like to think that we're the number one thing that's out there. To know that our kids were not getting the same benefits was very, very frustrating.
Because they were hearing about what Eden was getting and West Unity was getting and Montpelier was getting and Edgerton.
The only thing that we were asking for was to pass a bond issue to build one new elementary school that would have replaced Lincoln, Washington, the preschool. And that levy was defeated handily.
There's operating money, which is operating levies, but there's also bond issues that you can pass to build facilities. Yeah, we put them on the same ballot. In 2011, we had to do the 5-year renewal levy for operating money, but that passed. And that was really critical to the school district. If we lose that 1.9 million, we would have had to cut a lot of stuff. So back in like 2011, the school's budget was probably, say, 15 million annually. So you've got roughly 2 million of that, which is about 15% of the school's budget that's on the ballot. So if that doesn't pass, the school has to figure out a way to cut 15% of their expenses because you just failed to pass the revenue you need. Now, what choices does the school have to cut 15% of their budget? 15% is deep. You're cutting into flesh, maybe even bone. You're not just cutting at the surface. So it's like bus drivers and athletic coaches, nurses, and all these support things that you don't really need to have an education.
People in the Bryan community didn't mind passing an operating levy because they knew it was on the ballot every 5 years. It never increased or decreased. It was dependable. Building a new facility, though, that left voters with questions.
I can remember now that, that getting that operating levy was where we focused more because that was more critical. And that may have kind of hurt our levy campaign a little bit. We weren't getting our tails kicked. Like it wasn't like it was 80% no. It was in that probably 55, 58% no, 42% yes kind of range. You're like, oh man, we're close enough. We just got to get a couple hundred more people on board. Difficult to swallow. We still felt strongly that that is what was best for the community.
After failing in the fall of 2011, the committee spent the winter campaigning and tried again in March of 2012. Despite a slight improvement, it fell again. The committee tried to make the third time a charm by running another campaign that summer, but it was unsuccessful.
And we came right back in August. We took a lot of heat as a committee when we ran a levy in August. Because people are like, oh, you're trying to sneak this. Everybody's on vacation in August, or maybe not engaged with the schools in August. You're trying to sneak this through. And to be honest, I never really thought about that. I just remember being so defeated in August, of 2012. When we lost, for that third time, the voters were sending us some kind of message. And we couldn't figure out at first if the message was, we just don't ever want to spend money on any new schools or new buildings, or if they wanted something different.
Kevin Klein was on both sides of the situation as a coach and as a teacher. While the failing of the levy brought uncertainty to him and other faculty, his football team was experiencing a 5-0 start heading into their homecoming game in 2012 against Patrick Henry.
I mean, anytime there's a levy, it's an issue. People would joke and say, oh, what passes levies? A good football season, and you hear those kind of jokes and stuff, but I was well aware of it. If you can't pass some of those things, there's going to be sacrifices and cuts. Now, whether that's sports programs or not, it really shouldn't matter. There's going to be teachers' jobs at stake. I think that was always a little bit in the back burner. Are we going to be able to pass this levy and get this through so that things can kind of continue? And people can continue to go through Bryan without having to make a whole bunch of cuts, because you need all those resources and stuff that you can get. So I was aware of those kind of things. And actually, my wife was a big part of the levy campaign and stuff that was going on at that time.
People often throw around the term that sports are a metaphor for life. It's a cliche because it's true. How someone moves about challenges in their personal lives can often reflect challenges in sports. It could be reminders to never give up. It could be overcoming an unbeatable opponent. It can even be a distraction that people need to escape real life. For the Bryan community on a mid-October night in 2012, it was all three of those things. The Golden Bear homecoming game was against Patrick Henry, or PH as people like to call them. Bryan hadn't beaten PH since 1999. Jim Funderburg and Chris Malengo were on the call for one of the best finishes to a high school game you'll ever see, or in this case here, and a reminder that you have to keep trying to get over that hump.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to high school football on the Golden Bear Sports Network. I'm Jim Funderburg along with Chris Malenga. And tonight, Chris, we got a rainy, cold, nasty Friday for football here tonight, and it's homecoming. How do you put all those things together,
well,
Bryan?
I tell you what.
It's a point where everybody got the message, you can never give up. We can never give up because you never know what's going to happen. We can't give up on this levy. Looking back, to me, that's what I think everybody in the community learned on that day.
As Diana Savage and Kevin Klein put it, on this day, the Golden Bears would have to battle two things: the Patrick Henry Patriots and Mother Nature.
And the rain was just pounding. It was awful in terms of weather and conditions and what you would want to be throwing the ball in, but we had a lot of confidence in our ability to move the ball in the rain.
And Tori misses one of the extra points. And I'm just like, oh no, this is just not going to work.
28-19. We'll kick the extra point, and it's short. Oh my goodness. That makes it a 9-point game with 5:09 to play in the football game.
You need two at some point. I don't know why you don't get the two.
Well, we'd work on kickoff team earlier in the week. And then Thursday nights, we always had a small session where we would do onside kicks. Tori Savage was really good at kicking them, believe it or not.
Tori Savage is the son of the aforementioned Diana Savage, superintendent of Bryan City Schools in 2012. And while Diana was in the stands losing hope that a win could be pulled out, Tori had a chance for redemption. On the ensuing kickoff, he placed a perfect onside kick near the opposing sideline, giving Bryan the ball back.
Recovering an onside kick right around midfield. Ball is bounced, it goes up in the air, Bears all over it, do we have it? I'll tell you, let's see, there were nothing but purple jerseys all around that football. If we don't come up with this, I'm going to be amazed. We've got it. We've got it. Nice kick by Torrey Savage. The ball
After a touchdown made it 28-26, they needed another onside. Defensive end Jason Hugg remembers defensive back Brock Miner coming into the huddle with a creative idea.
Brock Miner came into the huddle and had this crazy idea. If he lined up where Torrey had previously lined up and then fake kicked it towards the opposing sideline, and then Torrey comes in right behind him and kicks it towards our sideline, that would catch them off guard.
I'll tell you what, last time we kicked it over to the left, and with that, the entire Patrick Henry team shifted all the way across the left hash mark. If you could somehow kick it down that right hash mark here at that last second, there was nobody over there to field it. Let's see what we're going to do.
He went with it and said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And that was not something we had practiced or drawn up.
A little bit of controversy on the recovery there, because it was pretty sloppy and on the sideline. It's funny because the PH guys still give me a hard time about that. And they're like, he did not recover that ball. And I'm like, well, official said otherwise. So.
What happened? There it is. Get on it. Bears got the ball. I think the Bears have the ball. Yes, they do. Down on the 43-yard line. Bears have the football.
No, we rode that momentum still. So we were going to take the call and we were going to do what we could with it. And Austin capped that drive off with a run and scored.
Right up the middle. Schimmer's gets the 10. At the 5, he's in.
The 2012 Bryan season ended with their first league championship in 26 years, an undefeated regular season, their second ever playoff berth, and first ever playoff win coming in their first ever home playoff game. They came up just inches short on an Austin Schimler run from advancing to the third round of the state playoffs. Their offseason was about retooling and trying to make one more run with a returning senior class. There was hope. There was a window of opportunity. The Levy committee was under adjustments themselves, but not nearly as optimistic.
The Levy committee, led by Bill Martin, led by some very key people that Bill put in place, went out and we actually started talking to the people who had voted no. And overwhelmingly, we did not get the answer that we expected to hear.
We thought as we first gathered, we were really down because it's like, holy cow, if the community doesn't want to solve what we thought was like the biggest facility challenge with our old elementary schools, what do they want? Like, what do they want us to do? Just put lipstick on a 100-year-old school? If that was the case, I gotta tell you, we were gonna be devastated because it's like, do I wanna live in a community that this is what they think is acceptable? So that was a very dark time. We could have given up. I could have said, and Diana could have said, oh, we gotta go let's get a different committee or but I don't give up easily, and neither does she, and neither did anybody on our committee. Like nobody wanted to give up, nobody. And that was encouraging to me. And it was a real gut check time. And so we all fanned out, to friends, family, and other people we knew in the community to say, where do we go from here, guys?
The history of Levy campaigns in Bryan were rough. In fact, at a community meeting in September of 2012, an 84-year-old man named Charles Wolf said of passing levies, quote, "Here in Bryan, Ohio, we've never done this unless we were led with a whip behind us. It's normal for Bryan," end quote. According to the Bryan Times, Wolf attended Lincoln Elementary when he was a kid, and so did some of his great-grandchildren.
The reason we heard was that this is not what's best for all of our kids. We know that you're going to come back in 5 to 10 years to ask for more money for the middle school and high school. And we were like, you're right, we are. And they said, we just want to do it all.
And we're like, but wait a minute, that's going to be bigger. That's going to cost more. That didn't really faze them, which made me think, well, maybe it's not about the cost or the money. It's about doing the right thing for the community. And if we did this plan to renovate the middle school, make it elementary, and to build this grade 6 through 12, it's going to cost $56 million to do it. but we could get $18.8 million from the state of Ohio to do it. And boy, we wanted that state money. When we did the elementary school, it's very complicated. The amount we were going to get was somewhat insignificant.
The new plan called for the grades 4 through 8 building to become the K through 5 building, and a brand new 6 through 12 building to be built on the grounds where the football team practiced, just a few hundred feet from the elementary school.
Get everything on one campus. People love hearing about that. You know, buses all go to the same place. Somebody that might work in the middle school in 5th grade, but can also do some stuff in the junior high for 7th graders. People loved hearing stuff like, all of a sudden, this plan sort of came together.
The committee targeted parents of athletes and parents who were involved in the school. They wanted to make sure they went out and voted because they had the front row seat to the community pride that was moving through the community. My mother was a school teacher and my dad was a basketball coach, and I was in 6th grade during this time. We had a sign in our front yard campaigning the people to vote yes. In due time, the committee was ready to try again. Bill Martin said it was in August of 2013, almost a year since the last failed levy attempt, where he started to believe success was a possibility.
We had a meeting, I know it was in August again, and we had it here at Spangler, and we had roughly 65, 70 people that came to this meeting, and we unveiled plan. Evan Brock, you know, our presentation guy, marketing guy, put together a fantastic 15, 16 slide presentation with like panoramic views. We came up with a unique campaign called Friend of a Friend, and it was about getting committed volunteers to first start reaching out to their friends and asking them to reach out to their friends. But when we came up with what we called the right plan, that's literally what we called it. That's not very sexy or exciting. We could get $18.8 million from the state, and all of a sudden, we could feel the momentum building with Friend of a Friend, and they were going out talking to their 10 friends. They were getting positive feedback as well. And it's like this groundswell of positivity was moving through our community.
We felt that we had the right plan. We felt we could use the momentum of the athletics and the sports teams to kind of help build that excitement.
Brian Arnold said friends of friends were telling each other about the football team's success. In the 2013 season, the Levy Committee capitalized on Golden Bear Stadium being the epicenter of the community every Friday night.
Like their families outside of it were so connected in the community. They're part of, they had it. So that pulled in the friends of family, or that pulled in the extended family, and just created such a huge following for our boys during those couple of seasons.
We had a television set that we set up in our campaign tent every home football game. But we set up out there, and we had a TV that would show the panoramic architectural designs of what this grade 6 through 12 building was going to look like. The support we got from the parents of those football players and the coaches, Coach Klein coming by, you know, before the games, patting us on the back, encouraging us. Didn't have to do that. Coach Arnold dragging tables out of the concession stand, so we had everything we needed. The assistance we got was amazing.
The community was stepping up and taking on different roles to maximize the efforts. Klein cited one particular player as an example of the humility and selflessness the team had.
Jason Hugg is a kid that always comes to my mind because Jason is not an offensive lineman. I mean, the way he's built and stuff is he's a tight end, and he had been a tight end for a long time. And I just remember we had to make a move because we were really struggling at the left tackle spot. We threw him in at practice one day at tackle. Like from that moment on, we were better, like instant in practice. And I'm like, he's going to have to play on the line for us.
The element that appealed to me was like the hard-nosed mentality of playing on the line. You know, we had a lot of great skilled position, but ultimately the success of our team and how far we were going to be able to go, it was going to be how much of a step, how much of a leap forward we could make as a unit on both like the offensive and defensive lines.
There's Jason Hugg again, and his services were needed in the 2013 homecoming game, this time against Wauseon. That's right, the team now coached by Travis Cooper, Brian's old coach. The full circle moment ended up being a matchup that felt similar to the previous year's game against Patrick Henry with how good the two teams were.
what, Chris, this is the night that we've been waiting for a couple of weeks, and I can tell you the same thing is probably true across the way when you look at the Wauseon fans.
Yep, 5-0 on the season, 5-0 on the season, undefeated in the league, a whole lot of computer points, state rankings, and this is the game.
And it was raining again.
A torrential downpour. It was raining so hard. I was standing underneath a pop-up tent, and it was raining so hard, I thought it was just going to collapse the thing on top of us.
You know, we have our tent, right? And we got our TV. We have to hide our TV because it's raining so hard. But we didn't want to, like, shut it down because you just never know when someone on the fence comes through and needs to hear it. Raining so hard, and I literally left the tent and moved over near the concession stand and tried to see what was going on.
What Martin saw was Bryan score a touchdown, get a stop, and start on a long drive to try and tie the game. With under 10 seconds left and down by 7, Bryan had one play to score. Austin Schimler ran the ball, but fumbled. In the scrum, Hug was at the right place at the right time.
The ball went into the end zone, and I dove on it and recovered it in the end zone.
Schimler up the middle. He's going to be short at the 2.5. That's 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Are they going to say he's in? He's in!
In the middle of the free-for-all, starting center and long snapper Jordan Bostetter was down on the field in pain.
54 Bostetter.
Jason had to forget about the previous play, but it didn't help that his own defensive coordinator made conditions a little more difficult than they already were.
I was the backup snapper for the PAT team. John Miner came over and saw me asking for a towel, and he tosses one to me. It's the most soaked towel you will ever have. I swear he picked it right out of the Gatorade bucket or right out of a puddle on the ground. I think it made my hands worse. I get ready to snap, and I set up the ball the way that I want, look down, between my own legs, and the world is upside down, the dark sky and all the rain, Sean Culler and Andrew Roop back there. And that image is so clear in my mind. I just remember seeing the hands flash or the ready symbol, and I snapped it, and it just rolled.
They got to kick this quick because once they started,
they'll have time to kick the extra point, but here's the pressure right now. Bad step comes up.
I knew it right when I snapped it. So I yelled fire, which is the universal word for botched snap.
The holder, Sean Culler, the kicker, Andrew Roop, and the receiver, Derek Nisley, all had to change their plans quickly and be there for each other.
Culler looking in the end zone. He's got his man. Touchdown! They got it!
Andrew Roop, so as the kicker comes through, has a 2-for-1 block that essentially buys enough time for Sean to flip around and kind of throw across his body to Derek Nisley in the end zone for a game-winning 2-point conversion. And in that one play, just going from I just lost the game for us to we won the game. Yeah, just the biggest swing of emotions that one can have.
It was like total bedlam. I'd never seen so many people in Bryan make so much noise. We have a reputation for sitting on our hands. Everybody in the world was screaming at the top of their lungs when that play happened. I just felt like we were going to win. I felt like walking out of there, we were going to pass this Levy, that we were going to win. That's what I kept thinking the whole way home. It was going to be in 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks maybe. We were going to win. It gave me that motivation to finish, right? To finish strong, not quit, keep going. Get our committee encouraged and motivated to finish, just like the football team did. They figured out a way to finish. That was the path that we needed. We had to finish. We had to finish strong, and so we went out knocking on doors. We went out knocking on people's doors, getting in their living rooms, and that it just made all the difference in the world. But the football team, I tell you, those guys gave us a venue to tell our story. They brought up the belief in the community that we could be better than what we were. That's what those guys taught us.
The more we talked about, can we go undefeated? Can we tie this into the Levy? And there were some really close calls in the football games. It just kept building and it just kept building. And you could feel it in the air. We were at Saturday morning soccer games. We were giving away donuts and hot chocolate just to get people to, talk to us and hear about the message. But that community just started to build, that excitement started to build. Research would tell you the passage of levies directly correlates to success in athletics.
Not only that, but according to a 2020 study by Bowling Green State University, operating levies and facility levies in small communities like Bryan that don't get passed can cause sports participation fees to jump, along with other cost-cutting actions a school might take.
In small communities like Bryan, especially in Northwest Ohio, families who have school-age children are dedicated, focused, and they are 100% engaged with whatever sports activity, musical activity, theater activity, because there isn't much else in a smaller community that gets their attention. So when we want, to be entertained, when we want to be social, when we want to be with people that have similar interests, we're going to find ourselves at a school event. And especially when you have school-age children, you're going to develop these relationships and these almost cohorts of parents that you're always with. So sports play a high role in providing that outlet for your community members, providing that entertainment, providing that positive event that they can attend.
The new plan, combined with the community enthusiasm, was enough to pass the levy on the November 2013 ballot.
And when it passed on the very first go, I think there was a little bit of shock. I think there was a little bit of disbelief at first that this really is happening.
We won 2,373 to 1,945. Very much like a team. It's interesting, the team in 2010, 2011 that didn't get it done on the elementary school was virtually the same team that did get it done in 2013. That entire school campaign, when we finally passed the big bond issue, I came to the conclusion that the majority of the voters in Bryan really do want what's best for our kids and for our community.
A lot of times when you talk about levies for a school, it's not always about getting the yes voters out, but it's hoping to keep the no voters away. And you don't want them to be so motivated. That's part of it too, is the community sentiment was good and there was positive feelings and there was good stuff going on. So that probably kept some of the no a little quieter. We struggled with all levies before then. Levies were not easy. Levies were not fun to run. We didn't have good success with them. Teachers and everybody around the school talked about how important it was that our football team had the success it had and how that boosted that levy. You can say it got the levy passed. You can say it definitely wasn't the only thing, but it might have been the thing that got it passed.
Even though the football team fell short of their goal of winning a state championship that fall, the lessons they taught the community in those 2 years affected the future for kids like me. Myself and so many of my peers felt like we knew every player on that team personally. They were role models to us because they cared about the town and they were talented individuals. I wanted to be like them. After the new 6 through 12 facility was finished in 2016, my class was the first one to finish 4 years of high school in the new building. This very project probably doesn't happen unless a levy is passed. With the new technology at my disposal in high school, I learned that media was what I wanted to pursue.
I think it's because education and athletics, they're just real difference makers in a kid's life. Kids growing up today, it's not always easy. It's not always easy at school, not always easy at home. You want to give them every chance to be the best they can be. Because if they can do that, they're going to have a really successful life.
Not only was an entire new 6 through 12 facility built and elementary school renovated, but since those historical seasons, Bryan has built a new press box at Golden Bear Stadium and raised funds through the Bryan Athletic Boosters to make the football field all-purpose turf in 2023. In the future, the Athletic Boosters are hoping to raise even more money to renovate or build new soccer, baseball, and other sports facilities. That feeling of community enthusiasm still hasn't died off after all these years.
Using that football team, and I knew those kids. I coached them in travel baseball. They were friends of my boys, knew their parents, wanted them to win a state championship, no matter what happened with the campaign. Like, I wanted those boys to win.
And they did. In fact, we all did.